Now for a quick lesson on semicolons and colons. This information is pretty straightforward, so this one won't take long. And we'll start with semicolons. You may use a semicolon to link independent clauses. This is the primary use of semicolons. And we've already discussed this a little bit in our lecture on comma splices. And here's an example. I refused the prize. I thought the contest was unfair. So that's an example of how you can use a semicolon. I'll give you a couple here. Chocolate chip cookies are amazing. They must be eaten with cold milk. So two independent clauses joined by a semicolon, correct way to use them. You may also use a semicolon, or this is the correct way to use a semicolon, with a conjunctive adverb or transitional phrase that links independent clauses. And this is when, if you remember, a conjunctive adverb is a word like however or therefore. And by transitional phrase, that would just be a phrase like for example or for instance or something like that. So in a sentence like this, Shadow is the cutest puppy. Furthermore, he has great manners. So on either side of that conjunctive adverb, furthermore, we have two independent clauses. Shadow is the cutest puppy and he has great manners. So the correct setup for this type of sentence is to use a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb and a comma afterwards. So anytime you use a word like however or therefore, in this way, you should use a semicolon and then a comma to join those clauses together. However, if the conjunctive adverb or transitional phrase does not link independent clauses, sometimes we use words like that just in the middle of an independent clause, then you do not use the semicolon. Instead, you just set it off with commas. So, for example, the black puppy, however, continuously barks at passing cars. So I hope you can see the difference between the sentence about Shadow is the cutest puppy, he has great manners. That word furthermore is between two independent clauses, whereas the sentence at the bottom of the screen, the black puppy, well, that's not an independent clause, nor is continuously barks at passing cars. We just use the however there to show contrast in the sentence. So in that case, you just set it off with commas. You don't use a semicolon. So there's that. We also can use semicolons to separate items in a series when the items themselves contain commas. And the best way for me to explain this to you is to just give you examples. So the contestants are from Charlotte, North Carolina, semicolon, Greenville, South Carolina, semicolon, and Atlanta, Georgia. And because each of the three items uses a comma, if we used a comma to create the list, if we used commas to create the list, that would just get confusing. Are we talking about contestants from Charlotte and North Carolina and Greenville and South Carolina? No, we're talking about contestants from Charlotte, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia. So the semicolons just create clarity here. Another example of this. Should we paint the room black, gray, and yellow, semicolon, blue, green, and white, semicolon, or pink, gray, and cream? So again, when the items within the series, it's really like a list within a list, right? I have a list of three lists. And so the semicolon is just the next notch up to create clarity in your outline of lists here. And finally, just a reminder that you do not use semicolons to link dependent and independent clauses. That is the job of a comma. So a sentence like this, because we arrived late, we had to sit in the back of the auditorium. That would actually be incorrect. That should be a comma right there. You only use semicolons to join independent clauses. And like I said, sometimes I have students running into this kind of issue because they get scared of comma splices, and so they're like, oh, I'll just always use semicolons. Well, no, you have to know how to use them. So for a sentence like that, you just need to use a comma. Although I prefer autumn, spring is also nice. All right, so that's semicolons, and let me go ahead and give you guys your bonus question for this week. So the bonus question on the quiz looking around my kitchen here, trying to come up with an answer. All right, how about this? My favorite cereal. What is Mrs. Bailey's favorite cereal? And that's an easy answer. I just love granola. I have granola as my cereal. So write it down. Bonus question on the quiz. Little extra credit point. Mrs. Bailey's favorite cereal is granola. Any brand. All right, colons. Real quick. Use a colon to introduce explanatory material in a sentence. However, and I have this in, there are two main rules about colons. What comes before the colon must be an independent clause, and that's just the rule. Anything that precedes a colon must be able to stand alone. So it needs to be a sentence like this. It had been a typical day on the job. He set up his waiter station and served customers. So what comes after the colon is explanatory of what precedes the colon. Now here's the thing. Could you use a semicolon there and have a correct sentence? It had been a typical day on the job, semicolon. He set up his waiter station and served customers. You absolutely could. You absolutely could use a semicolon and have a correct sentence. So why would you use a colon instead? What the colon does is it creates a different emphasis on the relationship between the two clauses. What a colon says is what comes after the colon is expounding upon what came before the colon. So it's just a different type of relationship. It's a little more formal. Here's another example. Our club has only one motto: pay your dues on time. And so again, what comes after the colon, that is explaining what the one motto is. It's defining, it's explanatory material. Now you can also use a colon to introduce a list, and this is probably the most common way that you see a colon used. But again, what you have to remember is that what comes before the colon in the sentence must be an independent clause. And this is probably also where I see the most mistakes made using colons. So you need the following things to succeed in life. Independent clause. Determination, hard, that's supposed to be work, forgive my typo, hard work, and lots of prayer. Here's another one, and this is an example of the incorrect use of a colon. We bought milk, bread, cheese, and eggs. And I hope you can tell it's just unnecessary. Like, that's an unnecessary mark of punctuation. Now, if you had written it this way, we bought the following items, colon, milk, bread, cheese, and eggs, then that would be correct. But it does. It needs to be an independent clause that comes before the colon to make it a correct usage. So there you go, semicolons and colons. Good luck.